I'm Amber 21, and I just discovered my entire college fund is gone. My mother, the woman who promised to support my dreams, spent $47,000 on my sister's wedding. When I confronted her, she looked me straight in the eyes and said those words I'll never forget. She deserves it more. You'll figure something out. I didn't argue. I just packed my bags and disappeared from their lives. Now, 2 years later, she's crying on the phone. Where are you watching from? If you've ever been betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you, hit like and subscribe. Growing up in our middle-class home in suburban Michigan, the differences in how my parents treated me and my sister Jenna were subtle but constant. From our earliest days, I was the responsible one, the studious child who brought home straight A's and never caused trouble. Jenna, 3 years older than me, was the social butterfly, the daughter who demanded attention and somehow always got what she wanted. My mother, Diana, would beam with pride at Jenna's social popularity while merely nodding at my academic achievements. When I won the state science competition in 8th grade, my mother said, "That's nice, sweetie," before immediately turning the conversation to Jenna's upcoming prom dress shopping expedition. When Jenna barely graduated high school, my parents threw her an extravagant party, inviting nearly 100 people and spending thousands on catering. When I graduated as valedictorian, we had a small family dinner at home. Dad was different, though. Robert Miller was a quiet, hardworking accountant who seemed to appreciate my dedication. He would sometimes wink at me across the dinner table when Mom was fawning over Jenna, a small acknowledgement that he saw me. But he never stood up to Mom, never challenged the obvious favoritism. It was easier for him to maintain peace than to fight for fairness. "Your education fund is growing nicely, Amber," Dad would assure me every few months. "By the time you're ready for college, you'll have enough for University of Michigan just like you want." That promise kept me going through high school. The dream of becoming a doctor felt within reach because of that assurance. I started working part-time jobs when I was 16, first at the local library, then adding weekend shifts at a coffee shop near our house. Every dollar I earned went into a separate savings account I opened myself. "Smart girl," Dad said when I showed him my first bank statement. "Adding to your future that way." While I was working doubles on weekends, Jenna was living her best life at state, changing majors 3 times and taking 5 years to finish a 4-year degree. When she ran out of spending money, Mom would send her more without question. Meanwhile, I worked through holidays and summers building my own supplementary fund while trusting that my parents were maintaining their promised college savings for me. And our family education was supposedly valued above all else. Grandpa Miller had established the tradition setting aside money for Dad's college, and my parents had promised to do the same for both Jenna and me. "Education is the one thing no one can take from you," Grandpa would say during his visits. I took those words to heart. The differences in how we were treated extended to gifts and celebrations, too. For my 16th birthday, I received a practical laptop for schoolwork. For Jenna's 16th, she got a used car plus a weekend trip to Chicago with friends. For Christmas, I would get sensible clothes and books while Jenna received designer purses and jewelry. I never complained. I told myself that material things didn't matter as much as my future. Then came Jenna's engagement to Kyle Williams during her final year of college. Kyle came from money, old money, the kind that expected certain standards. His parents, the Williams, lived in the wealthy part of town in a house that could fit our home 3 times over. From the moment Jenna showed off her 2-carat diamond engagement ring, it was clear this would be no small affair. "The Williams are expecting at least 200 guests," my mother announced at dinner 6 months before the wedding. "We need to match their contributions. It's a matter of family pride." I watched my father's face pale slightly as he nodded along. Even with his accountant's salary and my mother's part-time work at a boutique, a wedding on that scale seemed beyond their reach. But no one consulted me, and it never occurred to me that my future might be sacrificed for Jenna's perfect day. "Kyle's parents have booked the Grand Lake Hotel for the reception," Jenna gushed during Sunday dinner 4 months before the wedding. "Mom, we need to decide on the flowers this week. The premium arrangements from Westfield Florists are almost $2,000 more, but they'll be absolutely worth it." My mother didn't even blink at the price. "Of course, sweetheart. Nothing but the best for your special day." I remember looking at my dad expecting to see concern about these mounting expenses, but he just sipped his wine and kept quiet. Little did I know that their solution to funding this extravaganza was sitting in what I thought was my secure college account growing smaller by the day as wedding bills piled up. Through all of this, I kept working and studying, maintaining my 4.0 GPA and adding to my own modest savings. I was named senior class valedictorian and received early acceptance letters from several universities, including my dream school, the University of Michigan. The medical program there was competitive and expensive, but with my academic scholarships and what I thought was my secure college fund, it seemed within reach. "We're so proud of you," Dad said when I showed them my acceptance letter. Mom nodded and quickly changed the subject to Jenna's wedding invitation design. Looking back, there were signs I should have noticed. The way my parents changed the subject whenever I brought up college costs, how they suggested I consider community college, just for the first 2 years. The nervous glances they exchanged when I mentioned my excitement about checking the growth of my college fund. But I trusted them. They were my parents. They had promised. I never imagined they would betray me so completely. March 15th should have been one of the happiest days of my life. I had received confirmation of my housing assignment at University of Michigan, and I wanted to check my college fund balance to finalize my budget for the upcoming year. Dad had always managed the account, but now that I was turning 21 the following week, I decided it was time to take responsibility for my own financial planning. The bank was quiet that Tuesday morning. I had taken a rare day off from classes and work specifically for this appointment. I wore my nicest blouse and slacks, feeling adult and responsible as I approached the desk of Mr. Watkins, the account manager who had handled my family's finances for years. "Amber, so good to see you," Mr. Watkins said, shaking my hand firmly. "Your father mentioned you might be coming in. You're all grown up now. How's school going?" "Great, Mr. Watkins. I've been accepted to University of Michigan for pre-med. I'm here to check on my college fund balance and possibly discuss options for managing it going forward." His smile faltered for just a moment before he nodded. "Let me pull up the account information." I sat there calmly, mentally calculating what should be in the account. My parents had started it the day I was born, adding to it monthly for 21 years. Dad had mentioned a target of $50,000 plus growth. With interest and some good investment years, I was expecting to see close to $70,000, enough to cover a significant portion of medical school. Mr. Watkins tapped at his keyboard, his brow furrowing slightly. He clicked a few more times before looking up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Amber, are you sure you want to review this account today? Perhaps you'd prefer to come back with your father?" A sliver of unease crept up my spine. "No, I'd like to see it now, please. Is there a problem?" He turned his monitor so I could see the screen. The account balance read $2,891.47. I blinked, certain I was misreading the number. "I'm sorry, Mr. Watkins. There must be some mistake. This should be my college fund account. This is the account numbered 45721, established by Robert and Diana Miller, with you as the beneficiary," he confirmed gently. "But that can't be right." My voice sounded strange, distant. "There should be much more than that." Mr. Watkins looked uncomfortable. "There have been several large withdrawals over the past 8 months. The most recent was 2 weeks ago for $12,000. Withdrawals? Who made these withdrawals?" But I already knew the answer. "Your parents are the account trustees until your 21st birthday. They have withdrawal privileges." He showed me the transaction history. Starting about 8 months ago, coinciding with Jenna's engagement, there had been a series of large withdrawals. $12,000 for venue deposit, $8,000 for catering advance, $15,000 for miscellaneous wedding expenses, and on and on. The room seemed to tilt sideways. I couldn't breathe properly. $47,000, nearly my entire future, drained away to pay for centerpieces and champagne fountains and a designer wedding dress. "Amber, are you all right?" Mr. Watkins was standing now, concern etched across his face. "Can I get you some water?" I couldn't speak. My chest felt tight, my hands tingling as panic set in. Mr. Watkins guided me to a small private waiting area and brought me a cup of water. I sat there for nearly 30 minutes trying to process what had happened, trying to understand how my parents could have done this to me. When I finally left the bank, I felt like I was walking through a fog. I got into my old Honda Civic, a hand-me-down from Dad when he bought himself a newer model last year. I sat there, keys in hand, unable to start the car for several long minutes. Memories flooded through my mind. Dad showing me the account passbook when I was 10, explaining how compound interest worked. Mom promising that they were taking care of my future when I worried about college costs in high school. All lies. I don't remember the drive home. Somehow I found myself pulling into our driveway, my body on autopilot, while my mind raced. Mom's car was there. Jenna's too. They were probably discussing wedding details, as they had been doing incessantly for months. I walked into the house to find them at the kitchen table surrounded by fabric swatches and photo books. A half-empty bottle of champagne sat between them. "Amber, you're home early," Mom said, barely looking up from the photos. "What do you think of these bridesmaid dresses?" Jenna is thinking the periwinkle might be better than the lavender. I stood in the doorway, unable to believe the scene before me. My entire future had just collapsed, and they were debating shades of purple. "I went to the bank today," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Mom's hand froze over the catalog page. Jenna continued flipping through photos, oblivious. "I wanted to check my college fund balance," I continued. Imagine my surprise when I found out there's only about $3,000 left. Now Jenna looked up too, a flicker of something like guilt crossing her face before she composed herself. "Oh, Amber," Mom sighed, setting down her champagne glass. "We were going to talk to you about that next week after your birthday." "Talk to me about what? About how you stole my future to pay for Jenna's wedding?" "Don't be so dramatic," Jenna said, rolling her eyes. "It's not stealing when it's family." Mom shot Jenna a warning look before turning back to me with a placating smile. "Honey, we just borrowed some money temporarily. Your father and I always intended to replace it." $47,000. When exactly were you planning to replace $47,000? Mom's smile tightened. "Well, these things take time. And honestly, Amber Jenna needs it right now. She deserves a beautiful wedding. You're younger, you have time to figure things out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I'm starting medical school in 5 months. How exactly am I supposed to figure that out?" "There are student loans, financial aid. You're smart, you'll find scholarships." She waved her hand dismissively. "Jenna has one chance at her dream wedding. She deserves it more. You'll figure something out." Those words hit me like a physical blow. She deserves it more. The naked truth of how my mother saw us had always seen us laid bare in 5 simple words. I didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked upstairs to my room, closing the door quietly behind me. I sat on my bed for hours staring at the wall, trying to process what had just happened. $47,000. Gone. My carefully constructed future suddenly built on quicksand. The worst part wasn't even the money itself, but the casual way my mother had dismissed my future as less important than a single day of celebration for Jenna. She deserves it more. The words kept echoing in my mind, opening up decades of small hurts and slights that I had buried deep. The missed piano recitals because Jenna had a social event. The abbreviated congratulations for my achievements, followed quickly by attention returning to whatever drama Jenna was experiencing. The constant message, sometimes subtle and sometimes blatant: "Jenna matters more. Jenna deserves more. Jenna comes first." Through my open window, I could hear them downstairs, their voices carrying as if nothing world-shattering had occurred. "I think we should go with the premium photography package," Jenna was saying. "The standard one doesn't include enough hours of coverage." "Of course, sweetheart," Mom replied. "Whatever you need to make your day perfect." I pulled out my laptop and opened a spreadsheet. Numbers had always comforted me, their solid reality, providing certainty in an uncertain world. I began calculating exactly what had been taken from me: $47,000 from the college fund, plus the projected interest it would have earned over the next 4 years. My own savings, $23,000 painfully accumulated through years of part-time work. Scholarships already secured $12,000 per year. Estimated medical school cost $70,000 per year for 4 years. The gap was enormous, insurmountable through normal means. Student loans would leave me hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, affecting my choices and my life for decades to come. I closed the spreadsheet and pulled out my phone, calling the one person I knew would understand. "Taylor, it's Amber. Something terrible has happened. Can I come over?" Taylor Jordan had been my best friend since 3rd grade. Unlike the fair-weather friends who gravitated toward Jenna, Taylor was steady and true, a constant in my life through every up and down. "Of course," she said immediately. "Are you okay? Do you need me to come get you?" "No, I can drive. I'll explain when I get there." 30 minutes later, I was sitting on Taylor's couch in her small apartment near the community college where she was studying graphic design. I told her everything, my voice surprisingly calm as I laid out the facts of my parents' betrayal. "Those absolute monsters," Taylor said when I finished. Her face was flushed with anger. "How could they do that to you? It's your money. They saved it for you. Apparently, it was never really for me." I said, the reality of that statement hitting me anew. It was always conditional on Jenna not needing it more. "What are you going to do?" Taylor asked, passing me a mug of tea. I took a deep breath. "I'm going to leave." "Leave? You mean like move out?" "Yes, I can't stay there anymore. Not after this." The decision crystallized as I spoke the words aloud. "I've been saving to get my own place after graduation anyway. I'll just accelerate the timeline." "You can stay here," Taylor offered immediately. "The couch pulls out. It's not much, but until you figure something out." "Thanks, Taylor. Just for a little while until I can find something more permanent." That night, I lay awake on Taylor's pull-out couch, staring at the ceiling, making plans. I would need to apply for every scholarship and grant possible. I would need to increase my work hours while somehow maintaining my grades. I would need to find affordable housing near campus. But first, I would need to leave home without creating a scene or giving my parents a chance to manipulate me into staying. The thought of a confrontation with my mother made my stomach twist. She had always been able to twist situations to make me doubt my own perceptions, to somehow make me feel guilty for having reasonable expectations. By morning, I had a plan. I would return home while everyone was out, pack my essential belongings, and leave a note explaining that I knew about the college fund and was moving out. No drama, no arguments, just a clean break. I arrived home at 9:30 when I knew Mom would be at her boutique job, Dad at his accounting firm, and Jenna probably still asleep at her apartment across town. The house was quiet and empty, just as I had expected. In my room, I began methodically sorting through my possessions. Clothes, books, personal items. I took only what would fit in my Honda, only what truly mattered. My laptop, my textbooks, the quilt my grandmother had made me, the small jewelry box containing the few precious pieces I'd been given over the years. Photos and mementos, my high school yearbooks and awards. As I packed, I felt a strange sense of lightness. Each item I decided to leave behind seemed to lift a weight from my shoulders. The matching bedroom set my parents had bought when I was 12. The desk lamp Dad had given me for Christmas 2 years ago. The collection of stuffed animals from childhood that sat on my window seat. They were just things, and somehow leaving them behind felt like leaving behind the expectations and disappointments they represented. When everything essential was packed in the car, I sat at my desk and wrote a brief note. "I know about the college fund. I know you took my money to pay for Jenna's wedding. I'm moving out. Please don't try to contact me for a while. I need time to figure out my future now that my plans have been destroyed. Amber." I placed the note on my neatly made bed, took one last look around the room that had been mine for 21 years, and closed the door behind me. Driving away from the only home I'd ever known, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Grief for the relationship with my parents that I now realized had been built on sand. Anger at the casual way they had discarded my future. Fear about what lay ahead. But underneath it all, a small surprising spark of liberation. For the first time in my life, I was completely free of their expectations and limitations. Whatever happened next would be entirely of my own making. I moved in with Taylor that same day, turning her one-bedroom apartment into a shared space. She gave me the bedroom for the first week, insisting I needed privacy to process everything that had happened, but I quickly switched to the living room pull-out couch. I couldn't disrupt her life any more than necessary. "It's only temporary," I assured her as I folded the couch into its bed form that first night. "Just until I can figure out something more permanent." "Stay as long as you need," she said, squeezing my shoulder. What are best friends for? The first week was a blur of practical concerns. I had to reroute my mail, update my address with the university, and figure out how to pay for the upcoming semester without the fund I had been counting on. I made an appointment with the financial aid office, bringing all my documentation about the sudden change in my circumstances. Mrs. Patel, the financial aid counselor, listened to my story with growing concern in her eyes. "I'm so sorry this happened to you, Amber," she said when I finished explaining. "Unfortunately, it's not the first time I've heard of parents misappropriating college funds, though usually not on this scale." "Can you help me?" I asked, hating the desperate note in my voice. "I've worked so hard to get into the medical program. I can't lose my spot now." She tapped her pen against her desk thoughtfully. "Let me see what we can do. There are emergency loans available, and I can help you apply for additional scholarships. Have you considered a hardship appeal?" For the next 2 hours, Mrs. Patel guided me through a maze of applications and forms. By the time I left her office, I had applied for 3 emergency scholarships, completed paperwork for additional federal loans, and scheduled a hearing with the hardship committee. "It won't cover everything," Mrs. Patel warned as I gathered my papers, "but it's a start." Meanwhile, my phone was constantly buzzing with messages and calls from my family. Mom called hourly, for the first day her messages growing increasingly manipulative. "Amber, you're overreacting. Come home so we can discuss this like adults. Your father and I are worried sick. This is childish behavior. How could you do this to your sister right before her wedding? She's in tears." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I threw myself into solving my housing and financial problems. I picked up extra shifts at the campus coffee shop where I worked part-time, extending my hours from 15 per week to nearly 30. I applied for a second job at the university library, working evening shifts reshelving books. Between the 2 jobs, classes, and studying, I was working nearly 70 hours per week. Taylor watched my exhausting schedule with growing concern. "You can't keep this up, Amber. You'll burn out before finals." "I don't have a choice," I replied, gulping coffee before rushing off to my morning shift. "Rent and tuition won't pay themselves." A week after I left home, Dad called. Unlike Mom's multiple daily attempts, this was his first try at contact. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Amber, where are you?" "Your mother is beside herself," he said, his voice tired and strained. "I left a note explaining where I went and why," I replied coldly. "Don't you think you're being a bit dramatic about this? It's just money. Family is more important." His dismissal of $47,000 as just money, when he knew exactly what it meant to my future, was the final straw. If family is so important, Dad, why did you and Mom decide Jenna's one-day party was more important than my entire future? Why did you lie to me for months? Why did you let me believe that fund was still there, still growing when you were emptying it for flower arrangements and catering deposits? There was a long silence on the line. "It's complicated, Amber. Your mother felt strongly that we needed to give Jenna the wedding she deserved. I didn't agree with using your college fund, but you went along with it anyway," I finished for him. "You always do. You've always let her favor Jenna even when it hurt me. You watched it happen my entire life and did nothing." "That's not fair," he protested weakly. "None of this is fair, Dad. Tell Mom I don't want to talk to any of you for a while. I need space to rebuild the future you both destroyed." I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking with emotion. The next day, I received a voicemail from Jenna. I almost deleted it without listening, but decided I needed to hear what she had to say. "Amber, it's Jenna. I cannot believe how selfish you're being right now. Do you have any idea how much stress you're causing Mom and Dad during what should be the happiest time of my life? This wedding is everything to me, and you're trying to ruin it with your little tantrum. So they use some of your college money. Big deal. You can get loans like normal people. You always have to be the center of attention, don't you? Always have to be the perfect daughter, making everyone else look bad. Well, guess what? This is my time, my wedding. Stop trying to make it about you. I stood in Taylor's kitchen listening to my sister's entitled rant with a sense of clarity I had never experienced before. This was who they were. This was who they had always been. No amount of explaining or arguing would ever make them understand what they had done to me. That evening, as I scrolled mindlessly through social media trying to distract myself from my exhaustion, I saw Jenna had posted new photos of her wedding planning. Final dress fitting, only the best for the big day. The caption accompanied a photo of her in what I recognized as a Vera Wang gown that probably cost more than a semester of my tuition. The comments were filled with congratulations and excitement from friends and family. It was surreal seeing the physical manifestation of where my future had gone, transformed into fabric and flowers that would be enjoyed for a single day and then forgotten. I closed the app and blocked both Jenna and my parents on all social media platforms. I couldn't bear to watch the spectacle purchased with my stolen dreams. Finding affordable housing near campus proved nearly impossible on my limited budget. After 2 weeks of searching, I found a listing for a house with 3 other roommates in a neighborhood about 2 miles from campus. The room was tiny, little more than a converted storage space, but the rent was just within my budget if I maintained both jobs. My new roommates were all graduate students, Maria studying sociology, Jen pursuing a PhD in chemistry, and Damon working on a master's in social work. They were all older than me and immersed in their own academic pursuits, but they welcomed me with kindness and understanding when I briefly explained my situation. Family can be the source of our deepest wounds, Damon said quietly on my first night there. You're brave to have drawn a boundary and stuck to it. I didn't feel brave. Most days I felt like I was barely surviving. The pace was grueling. I would wake at 5 to study before my morning coffee shop shift, attend classes in the afternoon, work at the library in the evening, then return home to study until midnight before collapsing into bed. Weekends were filled with double shifts and marathon study sessions. There was no time for friends, no time for rest, no time for anything but survival. About a month into this punishing routine, I nearly broke. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I had just received notice that one of the emergency scholarships I had applied for had been denied. I was sitting in my tiny room staring at the email, feeling the walls of possibility closing in around me. I had been running on fumes for weeks, and suddenly I couldn't remember why I was fighting so hard. I put my head down on my desk and sobbed deep, wrenching cries that seemed to come from the very center of my being. I cried for the lost money, for the betrayal, for the childhood of always coming second, for the exhaustion that had become my constant companion. I cried until there was nothing left, until I was empty and hollowed out. When the storm passed, I sat up and wiped my eyes, noticing for the first time that someone had slipped a note under my door. It was from Jen, my roommate. I heard you crying. I left some dinner for you in the microwave. Also, my professor is looking for a research assistant with pre-med background. Pays better than the library. Let me know if you're interested. That small gesture of kindness from someone who was practically a stranger gave me the strength to keep going. The next day, I met with Jen's professor, Dr. Santiago, who offered me the research assistant position on the spot after reviewing my transcript. The job paid nearly twice what I was making at the library and offered more flexible hours. You have impressive credentials, Doctor, Santiago said, studying me with kind eyes. But you look exhausted, young woman. Are you getting enough rest? I'm managing, I replied the standard answer I had been giving everyone. Life has a way of testing us when we least expect it, she said thoughtfully. The key is to recognize when we're being broken down or being rebuilt into something stronger. With Dr. Santiago's mentorship and the better-paying job, things began to stabilize slightly. I was still working too much and sleeping too little, but the immediate financial panic began to recede. I developed a routine that, while exhausting, was at least sustainable. And through it all, I maintained my perfect GPA, refusing to let my parents' actions derail my academic goals. The hardship committee approved additional aid, reducing my tuition burden somewhat. Between that, my jobs, and the loans I had reluctantly accepted, I could see a path forward, difficult and steep though it was. It wasn't the future I had planned, but it was a future I was building with my own two hands, and there was pride in that. My parents continued their attempts to contact me, though with decreasing frequency as weeks turned into months. Mom's tactics ranged from guilt trips to anger to financial bribes, none of which moved me. Dad's occasional messages were more subdued, usually just asking if I was okay. I responded only to him with brief confirmations that I was alive and well, nothing more. The support I found in unexpected places sustained me. Taylor remained my rock, insisting on weekly movie nights to ensure I took at least some time for myself. My roommates, initially strangers, became a kind of family, each in their own way, looking out for me. Dr. Santiago took a special interest in my academic progress, providing guidance that went beyond our research work together. 6 months after leaving home, I had established a new life. It wasn't easy or comfortable, but it was mine, built on my own terms. I had survived the worst of the crisis and found strength I never knew I possessed. What I didn't realize was that the most difficult test still lay ahead. Jenna's wedding was scheduled for June 18th, exactly 6 months and 3 days after I discovered the theft of my college fund. I knew the date because it had been announced and discussed incessantly for months before I left home. I had planned to request that day off work months ago, back when I was still expected to be a bridesmaid in a periwinkle dress standing beside my sister as she married Kyle. Instead, I was working a double shift at the campus coffee shop, serving lattes to summer students and local professionals. I had deliberately scheduled myself to work that day, wanting to be too busy to think about what was happening across town at the Grand Lake Hotel. "You sure you're okay working today?" my manager Antonio asked as we prepared for the morning rush. "Isn't your sister's wedding today?" I was surprised he remembered. I had mentioned it once months ago, before everything fell apart. "Yes, but I'm not attending. We had a falling out." Antonio nodded, not pressing for details. That was one thing I appreciated about him. He respected boundaries. "Let me know if you need a break. Saturdays can be intense." The morning passed in a blur of orders and customers. I focused intently on each task, making each drink with precision, smiling at each customer with practiced warmth. Work had become my sanctuary, the place where I could lose myself in routine and purpose. Around noon, my phone began buzzing with notifications. I ignored it until my break, when I finally checked to see what was happening. My stomach dropped. Several relatives who didn't know about the family rift were sending me photos of the wedding, assuming I would want to see them since I, unfortunately, couldn't attend due to work commitments, an excuse my mother had apparently provided. Cousin Rachel. "The ceremony was beautiful. Wish you could have been here. Uncle Steve. Your sister looks stunning. The flowers are amazing. Aunt Karen. What a perfect day. The champagne fountain is a big hit." Along with the messages came photos. Jenna in her designer gown beaming beside Kyle. My parents looking proud and happy, not a hint of guilt or regret visible on their faces. The elaborate floral arrangements that must have cost thousands. The champagne fountain, the 6-tier cake, the string quartet, the custom dance floor. Each image was like a physical blow, a visual representation of where my $47,000 had gone. The money that should have been furthering my education and securing my future had been transformed into ephemeral luxuries that would last a single day. I made it through 2 more photos before I had to rush to the employee bathroom, locking the door behind me as tears threatened to overwhelm me. I gripped the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror, trying to regain control. "Amber, you in there?" A gentle knock on the door. Mia, my co-worker, sounding concerned. "Antonio sent me to check on you. Break ended 15 minutes ago." I splashed cold water on my face and opened the door. "Sorry, I lost track of time." Mia took one look at my red eyes and pulled me into a quick hug. What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. It's nothing, I said automatically, then stopped myself. Actually, no, it's something. Today's my sister's wedding. I thought you weren't close with your family anymore. I'm not. It's complicated. I hesitated, then decided to tell her the truth. We had become friends over the past few months, sharing shifts and study sessions. My parents took my entire college fund to pay for her wedding. That's why I'm working so much trying to stay in school. Mia's eyes widened. Are you serious? They stole your college money for a wedding? That's messed up. Hearing someone else call it what it was, theft, felt validating. Yeah, it is, and now relatives are sending me pictures of all the things my education paid for. Give me your phone, Mia said firmly. When I handed it over, she quickly navigated to my settings and turned off notifications. There, no more wedding updates. And after work, we're going out. My treat. You shouldn't be alone today. That evening, Mia took me to a small jazz club downtown, a place where the music was loud enough to drown out thoughts and the atmosphere encouraged forgetting. We sat at a corner table, sipping drinks and letting the saxophone wash over us. I've decided to completely cut contact with them, I said during a break between sets. Not just temporarily, but for good. I've been on the fence about it, but seeing those wedding pictures today made it clear. They're never going to understand what they did to me. Are you sure that's what you want? Mia asked, stirring her drink thoughtfully. Family estrangement is a big step. They weren't really family, I said, the realization crystallizing as I spoke. Real family doesn't sacrifice one child's future for another's party. Real family doesn't say she deserves it more when talking about their children. They made their choice, and now I'm making mine. The next day, I changed my phone number and created a new email address. I wrote a letter to my extended family explaining briefly why I would not be in contact with my parents or sister going forward, asking them to respect my decision. I sent it only to those I cared to maintain relationships with Aunt Susan, who had always been kind to me, Grandpa Miller, who had established the tradition of education funding that my parents had betrayed, Cousin Rachel, who had been more like a friend than a relative. Aunt Susan called me as soon as she received the letter. I had no idea, Amber. No one told us what really happened. Your mother just said you were being difficult about some wedding expenses. It was my entire college fund, Aunt Susan, $47,000. There was a shocked silence on the line. I don't even have words. That's so wrong on so many levels. I know. That's why I can't be around them right now. Maybe ever. I understand, sweetheart, and I want you to know that this pattern goes way back. Your mother always resented that she had to work through college while her sister, our other sister, got more support. I think she's been playing out that old resentment through Jenna and you. It doesn't excuse what she did, but it might help you understand. That conversation with Aunt Susan provided context I had never had before, helping me see that my mother's favoritism wasn't really about me or Jenna at all, but about her own unresolved issues. My decision to cut contact completely infuriated my mother. She began trying to reach me through friends, through the university, even attempting to contact me at work. Each time I calmly refused the contact. Each refusal made me stronger, more certain of my boundaries. Meanwhile, the toll of working so many hours while maintaining a full course load began to show in my academics. For the first time in my life, I was struggling to keep up with my classes. Midterm exams in my biochemistry course nearly broke me. I received a C, the lowest grade I had ever gotten. The professor, Dr. Nguyen, asked me to stay after class. Amber, what's going on? Your work earlier in the semester was exemplary, but these last few weeks you've been slipping. I tried to explain about my work schedule, about the financial pressures, without going into the painful details of why those pressures existed. Dr. Nguyen listened carefully. You're working yourself into the ground and your education is suffering. That's counterproductive. Have you spoken with your advisor about reducing your course load? I can't, I explained. My scholarships require full-time enrollment. Then something else has to give. You can't continue like this. She was right, but I didn't see a solution. I needed the money from both jobs to cover tuition and living expenses. I needed to maintain my grades to keep my scholarships. The equation didn't balance, and for the first time since leaving home, I began to wonder if I would have to give up on my dream of becoming a doctor. That night, I lay awake in my tiny bedroom, staring at the ceiling and facing the possibility that my parents had won after all. Despite all my efforts, despite working until exhaustion, despite maintaining my boundaries and independence, I might still lose everything I had worked for because of their betrayal. No. The thought came with sudden fierce clarity. I would not let them win. I would not let their actions determine my future. There had to be another way, and I would find it. The next day, I made an appointment with the dean of students, determined to lay out my situation and ask for help. I had been trying to handle everything alone, too proud or too scared to fully reveal the extent of my predicament. That had to change. Dean Washington listened without interruption as I explained everything: my parents' theft of my college fund, my sudden need to become completely self-supporting, my struggle to balance work and academics. When I finished, she sat back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. Amber, thank you for trusting me with your story. What your parents did was reprehensible, and I'm deeply sorry you've had to deal with this betrayal while pursuing your education. I don't know what to do, I admitted, hating the tremble in my voice. I'm working as much as I possibly can, but it's still not enough. And now my grades are slipping, which puts my scholarships at risk. It feels like a no-win situation. Dean Washington leaned forward. There are options you may not be aware of. First, the university has emergency funds specifically for situations like yours. Second, we can arrange a work-study position that would allow you to reduce your outside work hours while still earning what you need. Third, I want you to meet with our financial counselor to explore additional loan options that might be less burdensome than what you've currently arranged. And for the next hour, Dean Washington helped me create a sustainable plan. By the time I left her office, I had an application for emergency funding, an appointment with the financial counselor, and the promise of a work-study position in the biology department that would allow me to cut my coffee shop hours in half. One more thing, Dean Washington said as I was leaving. I want you to join our student support group for first-generation and independent students. You're not the only one trying to make it on your own, and having a community who understands can make all the difference. She was right. The support group became a lifeline, introducing me to others who were navigating college without family support. Some had experienced abuse, others abandonment, and many financial betrayals similar to mine. Through their stories and advice, I learned strategies for surviving and thriving independently. Lisa, a third-year law student who had been disowned by her family when she came out as gay, became a particular mentor. The hardest part isn't the practical stuff, she told me during one meeting. It's the grief. You're not just losing financial support, you're losing the parents you thought you had, the family you believed in. You have to let yourself mourn that. With her encouragement, I finally allowed myself to grieve, not just for the lost money and the hardship it caused, but for the deeper betrayal the parents who had failed in the most fundamental obligation to love their children equally and support their dreams. The months passed, and slowly my new life took shape. The emergency funding and work-study positions stabilized my finances enough that I could reduce my work hours to a manageable level. My grades recovered, and I found a rhythm that, while still challenging, no longer felt like drowning. Thanksgiving arrived, marking nearly a year since the discovery that changed everything. Taylor insisted I join her family for the holiday, refusing to hear any protests. "You're coming home with me, end of discussion," she said as we drove to her parents' house in the suburbs. "Mom's making her famous pumpkin pie just for you." The Jordans welcomed me with warmth that brought tears to my eyes. Mrs. Jordan hugged me tightly when I arrived, whispering, "We're so glad you're here, sweetheart. Any friend of Taylor's is family to us." Sitting around their dining table, passing dishes and sharing stories, I felt a pang of what I had lost. But I also recognized what I had found, a chosen family who valued me for exactly who I was, without conditions or comparisons. After dinner, Mr. Jordan took me aside. "Taylor told us a bit about your situation. I want you to know that our door is always open to you, Amber. Holidays, weekends, whenever you need a place to go, you have one here." His kindness nearly undid me. "Thank you," I managed to say past the lump in my throat. That means more than you know. When I returned to my apartment after the holiday weekend, there was a package waiting for me with Aunt Susan's return address. Inside was a small velvet jewelry box containing a pair of pearl earrings I recognized as a family heirloom, along with a letter. Dear Amber, Aunt Susan wrote, these earrings belong to your great-grandmother Miller, who believed strongly in education for women at a time when that wasn't common. I think she would want you to have them now. I've also enclosed something else that might help with your education. I sold some of my own jewelry to create a small fund for you. It's not nearly what you lost, but I hope it helps. I'm so proud of the strength and dignity you've shown through this ordeal. Love always, Aunt Susan. Beneath the letter was a check for $5,000. I sat on my bed holding the earrings and the check, overwhelmed by my aunt's generosity. It wasn't just the money, though, that would certainly help. It was the acknowledgement of the wrong that had been done to me and the tangible support that said my dreams mattered. As the academic year progressed, I continued to excel in my classes despite the challenges. Dr. Santiago. My research supervisor became an important mentor, guiding my academic development and encouraging my interest in research medicine. You have a natural talent for this work, she told me one afternoon as we reviewed data from our latest experiment. Your ability to see patterns and connections is exceptional. I'm considering focusing on research medicine rather than clinical practice, I confided. This work feels meaningful in a way I hadn't expected. Whatever path you choose, you'll excel, she said confidently. You've already overcome obstacles that would have defeated many others. That resilience will serve you well in any medical career. With her encouragement, I applied for and received a prestigious undergraduate research grant, further solidifying my academic standing and providing additional financial support. The pieces of my new life were falling into place, created through my own efforts and the support of those who had chosen to invest in me. In January, just after the start of the new semester, I had an unexpected encounter. I was working my usual morning shift at the campus coffee shop when I looked up to see my father standing at the counter, looking uncomfortable and out of place. Amber, he said, his voice uncertain. I was hoping I might find you here. I maintained my professional demeanor, though my heart was pounding. What can I get for you? Could we talk? Just for a few minutes, please? I glanced at Antonio, who nodded subtly, indicating he could cover for me. I have a 10-minute break, that's all. And we sat at a corner table as far from other customers as possible. Dad looked older than I remembered, more lines around his eyes, his shoulders slightly stooped. How did you find me? I asked, my voice neutral. Your friend Taylor. I went by her apartment looking for you, and she told me you work here mornings. She wasn't happy to see me, he added with a rueful smile, quite protective of you. She's been there for me when my family wasn't. Dad winced at that. I deserve that. I know I do. He took a deep breath. I won't take much of your time. I just wanted to see for myself that you're okay. Your mother and I, well, your mother mainly. She's convinced you must be living in squalor, starving, failing out of school. As you can see, I'm fine. Working, studying, building a life without your help. Yes, I see that. He looked down at his hands. Amber, what we did was wrong. I want you to know that I know that. Taking your college fund for Jenna's wedding, I should never have allowed it. I should have protected your future. It was the first clear acknowledgement from either of my parents that they had done something wrong. After a year of justifications and excuses, the simple admission was startling. Why didn't you? I asked quietly. He sighed heavily. The path of least resistance. It's been my way with your mother for our entire marriage. It was easier to give in than to fight, easier to let her have her way than to deal with the conflict. And Jenna is so much like her, they both push until they get what they want. You never pushed, Amber. You just quietly succeeded on your own. So I was punished for being self-sufficient, for not demanding attention. Yes, it's not right or fair, but that's what happened. He rubbed his face wearily. The wedding was a disaster, you know. $60,000 for a marriage that lasted 8 months. Jenna and Kyle separated in December. I wasn't surprised. Jenna's relationship with Kyle had always seemed based more on status than connection. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said automatically, though I felt little genuine sympathy. "Your mother is devastated. Between that and your absence, she's not doing well. She wants to see you to explain her side of things." I shook my head firmly. "I'm not ready for that. I don't know if I'll ever be ready." What she did, what you both did, wasn't just about money. It was a statement about how much you valued me compared to Jenna. Dad nodded slowly. "I understand. I won't push, but if you ever change your mind, the door is open." As he stood to leave, he hesitated, then said, "I'm proud of you, Amber, for standing on your own, for continuing your education despite everything. You're going to be an exceptional doctor someday." I watched him walk away, a complex mix of emotions swirling within me. His words didn't heal the wound of betrayal, but they did provide a kind of closure. He had acknowledged the wrong done to me without excuses or justifications. It was something, even if it wasn't enough. That brief encounter with my father didn't change my decision to maintain distance from my family, but it did start a small shift in how I thought about my past and my future. The anger that had been my constant companion began to loosen its grip, making space for something else to grow. 2 years passed since that fateful day at the bank when I discovered my college fund had been emptied to pay for Jenna's wedding. In that time, I had built a new life piece by careful piece. The initial crisis had evolved into a stable, if still challenging, existence. I was thriving academically, maintaining strong relationships with my chosen family of friends and mentors, and steadily progressing toward my goal of medical school. My apartment, now shared with just Maria as the others had graduated and moved on, had become a true home. My financial situation, while never easy, was manageable through a combination of scholarships, grants, work study, and careful budgeting. I had even managed to start a small emergency savings account, a security buffer that represented how far I had come from those desperate early days. I was in the middle of studying for finals, my senior year nearly complete, when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something compelled me to answer. "Hello." "Amber, it's your mother." I nearly hung up immediately, my heart racing at the sound of her voice. It had been 2 years since we had spoken directly, though Dad occasionally sent brief texts, checking in, which I sometimes acknowledged with equally brief responses. "How did you get this number?" I asked coldly. "Your father," she admitted. "I know you didn't want me to contact you, but please just give me 5 minutes." I should have hung up. Every instinct told me to protect myself from whatever manipulation might be coming, but curiosity, or perhaps some lingering need for resolution, kept me on the line. "5 minutes," I agreed, glancing at my watch. "I've been seeing a therapist," she began, her voice wobbling slightly. "After your father almost left me last year, I finally had to face some hard truths about myself and how I've treated both my daughters." This was unexpected. Dad had never mentioned nearly leaving. "The therapist helped me understand that I've been reenacting my own childhood trauma through my relationship with you and Jenna. My sister was always the favorite, always got everything while I was expected to make do. When I had daughters of my own, I unconsciously flipped the script, favoring Jenna the way my sister was favored, making you the one who had to be strong and self-sufficient." She took a shaky breath. "It doesn't excuse what I did taking your college fund for Jenna's wedding. That was wrong on every level, and I see that now. I justified it at the time by telling myself you were smart enough to figure things out, capable enough to manage without help. I didn't want to admit that I was simply favoring Jenna the way I'd always done, the way I'd been determined to do because of my own pain." I sat silently, trying to process what I was hearing. It aligned with what Aunt Susan had told me years ago about Mom's resentment toward her own sister. "Jenna's divorce was a wake-up call," she continued. "All that money, all that effort to give her the perfect wedding, and the marriage collapsed almost immediately. Meanwhile, you walked away from us with nothing and built a successful life through sheer determination. It made me question everything I thought I knew about parenting, about which daughter actually needed what." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. Because I'm sorry, Amber. Truly, deeply sorry for the pain I caused you, for the unfairness, for the betrayal. Your father and I have taken out a home equity loan. We want to repay the money we took from you with interest. It won't undo the hardship you've experienced, but it might help with medical school costs. I closed my eyes, thinking about what this offer meant. 2 years ago, I would have given anything to hear these words to have my college fund restored. Now the situation was more complicated. I don't want your money, I said finally. I've managed without it for 2 years. I've received scholarships and grants. I've worked multiple jobs. I'm going to graduate with honors next month. Taking your money now feels like it would erase everything I've accomplished on my own. I understand, she said quietly. The offer stands if you ever change your mind. Would you consider letting us attend your graduation? We don't have to interact. We could sit in the back. I just want to see you achieve what you've worked so hard for. It was a small request, one that cost me nothing to grant. You can attend, I agreed, but I'm not ready for a family reunion. I need more time. Time is something I can give you, she said. Thank you for listening, Amber. For what it's worth, I'm incredibly proud of the woman you've become, even though I can't take any credit for the strength you've shown. After we hung up, I sat for a long time reflecting on the conversation. My mother's apology didn't magically heal the wound of betrayal, but it did provide context that helped me understand what had happened from a different perspective. Her offer of repayment wasn't something I wanted or needed now, but the acknowledgement behind it that what she had done was wrong and deserved restitution, that mattered. The day of graduation arrived sunny and warm. As I prepared in my apartment, putting on the cap and gown that symbolized so much hard-won achievement, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been far more difficult than I had ever anticipated, with betrayals and hardships I couldn't have imagined. But I had survived. More than survived, I had thrived, discovering reserves of strength and resilience I never knew I possessed. Taylor arrived to drive us to the ceremony, bursting through my door with a bouquet of sunflowers. I can't believe we made it, she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug. Dr. Amber Miller, future medical genius. I laughed, hugging her back. Not a doctor yet, that's still 4 years away. Details, details, she waved dismissively. Today we celebrate how far you've come. At the ceremony, I scanned the audience briefly, spotting my parents sitting near the back as promised. Dad raised his hand in a small wave, which I acknowledged with a slight nod. They were here as observers, not participants in my achievement. My real family, the people who had supported me through the darkest times, were sitting together in the front section. Taylor and her parents, Maria, and our other roommates, Dr. Santiago and Mrs. Patel from Financial Aid, Aunt Susan, who had flown in specially for the occasion. These were the people who had believed in me, who had offered help without conditions, who had valued me for exactly who I was. As I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, their cheers rang out, drowning all other sounds. In that moment, I felt the full circle of my journey from betrayal to triumph. My parents' decision to take my college fund had been meant to benefit my sister at my expense. But it had inadvertently given me a different, perhaps more valuable gift, the knowledge that I could survive anything, build anything, become anything through my own efforts. Later, at the small celebration Taylor's parents hosted at their home, Aunt Susan pulled me aside. I know your parents were at the ceremony. How do you feel about that? I considered the question carefully. I'm glad they came, not for them, but for me. I wanted them to see that their actions didn't stop me, that I succeeded despite what they did not because of anything they gave me. And the future, will you reconcile? I don't know, I answered honestly. Maybe someday in some form, but it would have to be a new relationship built on honesty and respect. I can't go back to being the daughter who accepts less, who expects less, who is valued less. That Amber is gone forever. Aunt Susan squeezed my hand. Good. That Amber deserved better, and this Amber knows it. As the evening wound down, I stepped outside onto the patio, looking up at the stars that seemed to shine with particular brightness. The journey from that devastating day in the bank to this moment of achievement had been long and difficult, filled with tears and exhaustion and moments of near despair. But it had also been filled with discovery, the discovery of my own strength, the discovery of true friendship and support, the discovery that family is not always defined by blood. My college fund had been stolen, but something more valuable had been gained in return, a deep, unshakable knowledge that I could rely on myself, that I could overcome betrayal, that I could build a future on my own terms. It was a lesson paid for at high cost, but perhaps worth the price after all. The path ahead would not be easy. Medical school loomed with its own challenges and expenses. But I faced it without fear, knowing that whatever obstacles appeared, I had the strength and resilience to overcome them. My parents' betrayal had not defined me or limited me. Instead, it had revealed the true extent of my capabilities, the depth of my determination. In the end, what they had intended as favoritism toward Jenna had become the catalyst for my own transformation and growth. "She deserves it more," my mother had said of my sister, but what I ultimately deserved was not a college fund handed to me, but the opportunity to discover my own power, to build my own life, to know with absolute certainty that my achievements were truly mine, and that it turned out was worth more than $47,000 could ever buy. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments, and if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that they can overcome family betrayal too. Thank you for watching, and remember, you have the strength within you to rebuild no matter what's been taken from you.